We're certainly glad to have you here. Mr. Summerell, Congressman Butterfield, and Mr. Reeves. We're certainly glad to have you here. If you would take one of those booklets that you have on the table, that the questions are in there. And in the number order that you have on the very first cover, there's a number that indicates how you will address the concerns you have. I'll read the question, and then you'll have 2 minutes to respond to it. First question on the first page in your booklet there is, tell us about you, your experience, and your background, and why we should vote for you in this office. Whoever has the lowest number.
Good morning. My name is Ernest Reeves. I'm from Greenville, North Carolina, and I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. I'm asking you all for your vote because I believe that we need Democratic representation inside the United States Congress. I decided to run to effect real change across every city and every county here in North Carolina. Now, a little bit about me. I'm from Greenville, North Carolina. I'm one of 12 kids. My mother and father had 9 girls and 3 boys, and I'm the baby of the family. My father used to work at East Carolina University. He did not have any education. He left ECU and started a grass cutting business. And a lot of people know, based on my background, that my father worked for United States Senator John East for more than 10 years. So I grew up not really knowing anything about politics, but I knew Senator East. And so I decided to enter the military, and while I was in the military, God just blessed me with different assignments all over the world, and a lot of them were nominative assignments. So I had opportunities to spend 20 years in the military, 9 years as an enlisted soldier, 6 years as a sergeant, 10.5 years as a military officer, and had opportunity to spend 6.5 years outside the United States in foreign countries, had opportunity to spend time in the Middle East in a combat zone, and had opportunity to, while I was on active duty, to win an ROTC scholarship to grad school to become a commissioned officer. During my 20-year career, I was very fortunate to have 3 nominative assignments. I spent almost 4 years at Seattle International Airport on behalf of the United States Army and Department of Defense, working with military men and women that travel throughout the nation, also other dignitaries like Congressman Butterfield here, and others, and also working different military operations as directed by the Department of Defense. Also had opportunity to spend 2 years as a commander of Cornet Recruiting Company in Michigan. I had the awesome responsibility of being the commander of Flint, Michigan, which I know is in the news right now. And later I had opportunity to be nominated and retire from the Department of Defense, Pentagon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a number 2. Thank you. Well, first, good morning to all of you, and thank you for having me back one more time. I've been to, not really this room, but to this building many times, and met with the Eastern North Carolina Civic Group, and I know many of you individually and call you my friends, and just thank you for all the great work that you do. I cannot compress 69 years of my life into 2 minutes. And so I'm just going to touch the high points and move on. Don, you do understand that, right? Okay, all right. I am a native of Wilson, North Carolina. I grew up as an only child of 2 wonderful parents. My dad was a civil rights activist. My mom was a dentist. My mom was a classroom teacher for many years. My dad came to Wilson in 1928 and married my mother, who was the daughter of the Baptist preacher. And immediately upon arriving in town, he was summoned by the white establishment to let him know that he would be given the favor to register to vote so that he could participate in the election. He registered to vote, but he did not like the fact that registration was a favor. And so he went out and tried to get others registered to vote. That did not work because he was stopped from doing that. 20 years later, he founded the NAACP in my hometown and became Mr. Voter Registration in the community. And so he went about town trying to get African Americans to learn the literacy test and to get registered to vote. And he had some degree of success. In 1953, he ran for the city council from a ward, and it was a tie vote, and by breaking the tie through a lottery, he won the election. He served on the city council until 1957. And while my family was away from town on vacation, city council called an emergency meeting, changed the method of election from district elections to at-large elections, and when we returned to town, there was the election, and he had to run citywide, and of course he lost, and he lost miserably. Because of that experience, it just gave me the interest in politics and law, and I pursued that path down through the years, and I continue to do that today as your representative in Washington. And I've come today to ask you to please give me the privilege to continue to represent you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Summerell?
Yes, good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank everybody, first our hosts and everybody that's attending. I'm running for this office for change. I didn't intend to run for it until about 6 months ago. I'm from the private sector. I run an insurance company in Greensboro. I'm a graduate at Davidson College in Wake Forest. Been in insurance all my life, but I became frustrated with our government and dysfunction in our government. So about 3 years ago, I went to the Libertarian Convention and became involved, and very quickly found myself on the executive committee and then ultimately the chair of the party. Our objective was to build a third option for the people of North Carolina. We recruited a candidate to run in District 1. He was a resident of Elizabeth City. When the redistricting came about, he was no longer in the district. And I decided I would take the challenge and run. I know I'm probably picking a fight with the toughest guy on the block, but I intend to run for other offices down the road, and I chose this one to step in for C.L. Cook, who had been the nominee, just to harden myself off and get ready for it. This is my first run for public office.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. All right, if you would now turn to page 5 in your booklet. Question number 5 says, there is an acknowledged gap in the performance of students in our schools. What strategies would you use to address the gap?
You want to show me
Yeah.
again? Okay. Well, first of all, I believe that every student deserves to have the best education. So I believe that we need more one-on-one teachers with students. When I grew up, I had a very bad speech impediment. And I noticed that my teacher took the time to spend with me outside of everything else that she did for the other students. And that helped me immensely. I also believe that we need to make sure that the teaching professionals here in North Carolina are not paid almost dead last. Now, it has increased a few spots in the last couple of months, but last year, the teachers in this state were paid 49 out of 50 in the United States, and that's absolutely wrong. In order for performance gap to be better, we must make sure that our teachers are paid better. We must make sure that the schools in rural areas and inner cities are the same as they are in other areas. For an example, I had opportunity to appear before the North Carolina Association of Educators for their endorsement the last time I was here. And when I went there, I spent about an hour with them, and they asked me a lot of questions. And I told them, I said that it is a travesty for the way that our rural schools are compared to other schools. And so I believe that we need to make sure that we pay our teachers better. We need to make sure that we have different programs for students that need additional help, and particularly students that come from inner cities. I had opportunity to be in charge of 77 high schools and 15 colleges while I was on recruiting duty in Michigan. And what I found is that the strategies that work in different schools didn't necessarily work in the inner city school. And I believe that we need to make sure that we have the programs available for those particular students that may be at risk. And we also need to make sure that we evaluate our teachers. Like, let me give you a prime example. I know some teachers that they said that they're unfairly critiqued compared to other teachers. And some of them have been in the system a while, so we must provide better training for them too as well. Some extra courses for them, pay them more money, and give them a way so that they can help themselves and also help our students.
Thank you. There's no subject more important than education in Eastern North Carolina. There is no question that there's a gap, not just between rich and poor communities, but between black and white and brown when you look at student performance. And so we've got to get creative and we've got to get bold in investing in our children. We cannot have children in Bertie County performing at a lower level than those in Orange County, which is very ill. The state constitution guarantees an equal public education to every child in this state. And until a child in Berkeley and Hereford and Gates County can have the same opportunity as a child in some other part of the state, I'm not going to be satisfied. Our schools are not in the 21st century. They are continuing to live in the previous century. But it's going to take something called money to solve this problem. Can't solve the entire problem. It's going to take resources. We've got to rebuild our schools, and we've got to pay our teachers more, as the gentleman just said a few moments ago. We've got to upgrade our schools, and it's going to take resources. The tragedy is that the funding for public schools fall on the counties. And that is a real burden for our counties to try to use the few taxpayer dollars that they have for property taxes to fund public education. We need more resources from the federal government. We have Title I under ESEA, and Title I is a wonderful program, even though Republicans use every opportunity they can to reduce the funding in Title I. But I believe after the election and after things settle down, after Ms. Clinton becomes president, and hopefully after we reclaim a majority in the Senate and a few more seats in the House of Representatives, hopefully some civility can take place and we can have a coordinated and intelligent approach to public education, not in North Carolina, but in this country. And we've got to talk about the interrelationship between charter schools and public education. We've got to have that conversation now.
Mr. Summerell?
Yes, thank you. I think education is at the intersection of social justice and economic justice. And I'm very much in favor of parental choice, having parents decide where their children are going to go to school rather than the school boards. I'm very much in favor of more pre-K. I think we need to intervene in a lot of children's lives earlier. And there is definitely a need for both public and private schools. They can compete with each other and improve each other. As far as teacher pay goes, I think we've all heard the saying, doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. Well, Indian chiefs are obsolete. It ought to be doctors, lawyers, and educators. In South Korea, the best educators, the best performing teachers in the classroom, there are a few of them that make over $500,000 a year because they're teaching other teachers while they're teaching their students. And our system right now is a little bit too rigid. And I believe that Ron Paul was right. I think our federal Department of Education can be eliminated. And if we eliminated it, the ask from the Obama administration for 2017, as I understand it, is $82 billion. If that money were used instead for block grants into some of the most poorly performing school districts and house districts in the country, A, District 1 would be in that, and B, if it went to the lowest 100 house districts, that $82 billion would be hundreds of millions of dollars each year coming into District 1 for the schools. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. This question is not in your booklet. And we'll give you a couple of minutes to please tell us what your view is of House Bill 2 here in North Carolina.
Well, I totally disagree with House Bill 2. And my reasons is because not only did House Bill 2 make it so that, that LGBTQ individuals cannot use the bathroom according to the sex that they identify with, but it also made sure that local municipalities cannot put in any non-discrimination laws that protect people from being discriminated against. In addition, it also stopped municipalities and city councils from raising the minimum wage or an increase in a raise for the people like they do in other cities, because this particular state won't increase the minimum wage. So like around the country, a lot of other city councils, they have increased the minimum wage to in some places $15. And so what happened when Charlotte decided to put in that ordinance, then the government, his party decided to put in House Bill 2. Now, there's several more components than that. Now, I'm not here to say that, now I am in the middle when it comes to deciding whether or not we can have anybody using a male or female bathroom, because I grew up with, like I said before, there's nine sisters, and I also have over 20 nieces. And I know that I have taken a lot of my nieces to the bathroom before, and I sit there wait for them to come, and some of them are 4 and 5 and 6 years old. So if someone comes up to the bathroom and want to go in there, I'm going to have a problem with that. So I'm just keeping it real. But I also understand the need to make sure that everybody is treated equally and fairly. But the point that that's really hurtful to that bill is because it turns around and discriminates against even more people. Because in the state of North Carolina, not only can you, it's a right to work state, but it's at will state. So those people that did have a way, when they had a problem that they can go through EEOC, now they have stopped not only discrimination, but also race and religion and sex. And so right now, that's a problem. And I'll do everything I can, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, do everything I can to put the pressure on North Carolina to repeal HB 2.
Thank you. I'm opposed to HB 2. I would like to see it repealed. It was not until just a few months ago that many North Carolinians even understood what a transgender person is. It was not a part of our conversation. It was not on our radar, and it certainly was not in our civic clubs and our churches. But now it is. Whether you know it or not, we encounter transgender people in our daily lives. I'm not going to say every day, but more frequently than you believe. It is just a fact. And what HB 2 tries to do is to accommodate this demographic, this classification of folks, so that they can have access to facilities that they are comfortable with. A transgender person is not a terrorist. They use bathrooms with us every day, and often, and we don't even know it. They are not a threat to our community. ISIS is a threat to our community. The alt-right movement in this country, the right-wing conservatives, are a danger to our community. It's not transgender people. It's nothing but discrimination, and shame on the Republican legislature and the Republican governor for promoting HB 2. It has given North Carolina a black eye. I will close with this. As you can imagine, I travel everywhere, all over the country, every week. And North Carolina has had an excellent reputation everywhere I go. People say great things about North Carolina, about the people, about the schools, about the beauty of our state, our transportation system. But now everywhere I go, it is a joke. Wherever I go, it is nothing but a joke. What's happening in your state? Even at the African American Museum the other day, at the dedication, somebody made a joke about it, how you can go through the museum, and when you get to the top floor, which is supposed to be modern times, you run into a North Carolina exhibit, and you fall to the bottom. I mean, someone made that disgusting joke, and so it has tarnished our reputation. And the way you begin to heal it is to repeal HB 2, and Don Davis is going to do that starting in January. We're going to give him a Democratic legislature.
Bring it on.
Mr. Summerell?
Sure, I think we're all in agreement here. It's an embarrassment to the state. It's an economic boom. We've all seen it with all kind of concerts and tournaments have been canceled as a result of it. I personally have been to 3 national conventions where they single out North Carolina and make jokes about House Bill 2 and the bathroom bill. It's costing us greatly. And if I can impose on Representative Butterfield, to me, it's discrimination. Imagine you were Representative Butterfield, a mixed-race young man in Wilson, North Carolina in the 1950s. And you were walking down the street and nature called. And you had two options at the bathroom. There was one that said white and one that said black. Some people aren't all white and all black, and some people, and I don't understand it, but they're not all male and all female. And we just need to accommodate all people. And if it's something we don't understand, we need to open our hearts and our minds more, not close them more.
Thank you. Now each of you will have a minute to give us a closing statement.
You want me to go first? Oh, yes. Again, thank you so much for inviting me here today, Mr. Sears, and this great organization. I've enjoyed being here. Sir, nice being here with you, Ms. Butterfield and Ms. Summerall. And my name is Ernest Reeves. I am the Democratic nominee for the 3rd Congressional District. I ask you all to please consider voting for me or tell someone about me. From everywhere from Carroll Tech down to the Crystal Coast back to Pitt County. And I make this one promise to you. It's not a pay for play, but should I be fortunate enough to join Ms. Butterfield inside of the House, I'll do everything I can to ensure that we take care of Eastern North Carolina. You will have access to my office, and I promise you that this won't be the last visit that I'll make here. I make a pledge that I will come back as often as I can, and thank you so much.
This is the most important, the most consequential election of our lifetime. Please take my word for it. There are forces at play here in North Carolina, throughout the South, throughout the country, that are trying to take this country back to a place that none of us want to go. And North Carolina, whether we like it or not, is ground zero for that movement. During the Jim Crow days, it was Alabama and Mississippi, but the ground zero right now is North Carolina. That's why we had all of these draconian election law changes. That's why we have this gerrymandered districts that have now been found to be unconstitutional. This is ground zero, and you've got to fight back. And so I'm asking all of you to give it your all over the next 30 days. Give it everything that you have. Go back to your communities and make sure that you have a 100% turnout. If you are a church person, and I know most of you, and I know you are, I want you to go to your churches and ask your church to do one thing. Adopt a precinct. Don't adopt a county, just adopt a precinct in your county and agree that we're going to knock on every door in this precinct in a nonpartisan way and make sure that we have every voter out during the early vote and on election day. But not vote twice. Early vote or on election day. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Summerell?
Sure. Like I said in my opening statement, political dysfunction is a major problem in this country. And if it's not addressed, it leads to political crisis. I think you all know Rahm Emanuel, which in 2008, when Obama was first elected, before he took office, he announced that Emanuel was going to be his chief of staff. And some press folks cornered him and said, Mr. Emanuel, what are you going to do? The economy's in free fall, the markets have crashed, mired in these wars overseas, what in the world are you going to do? And Rahm Emanuel didn't skip a beat. He said, never waste a crisis. Never waste a crisis. And if we don't get our political ship turned around so that the House and the Senate start working together in a civil way, we could have a crisis. And a crisis is good if you're the third party, if you're the underdog, if you're the change maker. A crisis is good. We've been working to develop the Libertarian Party, and I hope you hear a lot from us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and speaking to us, and we certainly appreciate it. I'm going to take the liberty to ask Mr. Summerell and Mr. Reeves if you will retire to the seat and leave the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus so that he might address us.
Thank you.
No candidate.
I understand. Well,